August 2025, two countries that had fought 3 wars over the same disputed territory in 37 years sat down and signed a peace agreement. The most anticipated artificial intelligence model in history was released and immediately used by 700 million people a week. And the United States and India launched a satellite that will track every centimeter of movement on the Earth's surface for the next decade. 3 stories about the distance between what was possible yesterday and what is possible today. The conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh began at the end of the Soviet Union and never fully stopped. The 1994 ceasefire ended the first war, but not the dispute. A 6-week war in 2020 reversed most of Armenia's territorial gains. In September 2023, a one-day Azerbaijani military operation resulted in the complete removal of the Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh. 30 years of frozen conflict ended with ethnic cleansing, and then the two countries began negotiating peace. On August 8, in Washington, Armenian Prime Minister Pashinyan and Azerbaijani President Aliyev initialed a 17-article peace agreement, the product of 2 years of bilateral negotiations that had been completed without a mediator, and then brought to Washington for a signing event that gave Trump the diplomatic optics. The agreement established borders based on the 1991 Almaty Declaration, recognized mutual sovereignty, and created a framework for normalization of relations. The most unusual element of the deal was a corridor through Armenian territory linking mainland Azerbaijan to its Nakhchivan exclave territory separated from the rest of Azerbaijan by 32 kilometers of Armenia. The United States would have exclusive rights to develop the route for 99 years. It was named the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity. The Trip Corridor, a piece of geopolitical branding that ensured American involvement, would be written into the physical infrastructure of the peace. The peace deal did not resolve everything. Azerbaijan declined to formally sign until Armenia completed constitutional reforms removing references to Nagorno-Karabakh from its founding documents, a process expected to take years. The approximately 100,000 Armenians who had been expelled from Nagorno-Karabakh in 2023 had no right of return under the agreement. The peace was real, its completeness was not. For the South Caucasus, the agreement represented the end of a war that had defined the region's politics, economy, and identity for a generation. Two countries that had structured their foreign policies around mutual hostility were now committed, at least on paper, to normalization. The regional implications extended to Russia, which had been the traditional guarantor of Armenian security, and to Turkey, which had backed Azerbaijan throughout. The balance of the region had shifted. The Nagorno-Karabakh conflict produced atrocities, displacement, and wars that claimed tens of thousands of lives. The peace agreement that ended it on August 8 did not restore what was lost. It acknowledged what had already been settled by force and attempted to build a stable framework on top of the outcome. That is often what peace looks like, not justice, but the decision that the cost of continuing is higher than the cost of accepting. The day before the Armenia-Azerbaijan signing, a different kind of milestone arrived, not at a negotiating table in Washington, but on the servers of a technology company in San Francisco, in the form of the most capable artificial intelligence system ever made available to the public. On August 7, OpenAI released DeepNS-5. The model was immediately available to the roughly 700 million people who use chatbots weekly. The capabilities were qualitatively different from its predecessors, significantly more capable in mathematics, where it solved 94% of competition-level problems in software engineering, where it completed nearly 75% of real-world coding tasks without human assistance, and in medicine, where it outperformed previous models on clinical reasoning benchmarks by a substantial margin. The release represented a shift from AI as a capable assistant to AI as a capable autonomous agent. DeepNS-5 could plan multi-step tasks, use tools, write and execute code, and complete extended projects with minimal human direction. The framing from OpenAI was explicit. This was not a better chatbot. It was the beginning of a different relationship between human labor and machine capability, where the boundary between what people do and what AI does had moved, again, and moved significantly. The immediate response divided along familiar lines. Developers described productivity gains that compressed weeks of work into hours. Researchers cited applications in drug discovery, materials science, and climate modeling that would previously have required large teams and years of effort. Critics pointed to the pace of capability increase without equivalent progress on alignment, interpretability, and governance, the gap between what the system could do and humanity's ability to understand or control it. The labor market question, which DeepNS-5 made unavoidable, was the one most people were actually asking. The model could write, reason, code, research, analyze, and plan at levels that in 2020 would have required a team of skilled professionals. The question was not whether AI would affect employment. It was how fast, in which sectors, at what scale, and whether the institutions that manage labor markets, education systems, and social safety nets were anywhere near ready for the answer. DeepNS-5 arrived in the same month as the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace deal, an accident of timing that produced an unintended juxtaposition. The peace deal was the product of human diplomacy, decades of grievance, and the slow accumulation of political will. DeepNS-5 was the product of a different kind of accumulation, billions of parameters, petabytes of text, and a training process that compressed more human knowledge than any single mind will ever contain. Both were milestones, only one had arrived too fast for anyone to fully understand what it meant. The governance gap around AI in August 2025 was not for lack of attention. Regulation was being drafted in the European Union, the United Kingdom, and individual American states. The Paris AI Action Summit in February had produced a declaration, but the pace of regulatory development and the pace of capability development were on different timelines. DIMPANET 5 was already deployed before most of the governance frameworks designed to assess systems like it were anywhere near complete. 3 days after DIMPANET 5 launched, a rocket lifted off from Florida carrying a different kind of intelligence, one designed not to process human language but to read the physical surface of the Earth itself, with precision that had never before been available to scientists. On August 10, NASA and the Indian Space Research Organisation jointly launched NISA, the NASA-ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar Satellite from Sriharikesha in India. It was the most expensive Earth observation satellite ever built, the product of a 12-year collaboration between the two space agencies. And the first satellite designed to use both L-band and S-band radar simultaneously to measure changes in the Earth's surface with centimeter-level precision. NISA's mission is to map every inch of the Earth's land surface and ice sheets every 12 days for at least 3 years. The data it generates will track glacial retreat in real time, monitor groundwater depletion, detect early signs of volcanic and seismic activity, measure the carbon stored in forests and wetlands, and track agricultural productivity at scales that make early warning of food crises possible. It is, in practical terms, the most comprehensive monitoring system the Earth has ever had. The scientific applications were immediate and significant. Glaciers retreating in the Himalayas, the Andes, and the Arctic had been monitored with gaps in data and limited resolution. NISA would close those gaps, groundwater aquifers being drawn down by agriculture in California, India, and the Middle East had been difficult to measure continuously. NISA would provide continuous measurement. The satellite was not solving climate change, it was creating the data infrastructure to understand it with unprecedented specificity. The geopolitical dimension of the launch was as significant as the scientific one. NISA was a collaboration between the United States and India, two democracies with a strategic partnership that had been deepening throughout the 2020s, and that the India-Pakistan crisis in May had tested without breaking. The joint satellite was a statement about the durability of that partnership, that even a nuclear-adjacent conflict with a neighbor did not interrupt the science diplomacy between Washington and New Delhi. The data NISA generates will be publicly available free to any researcher, government, or institution with the capacity to use it. In a world where satellite data is increasingly proprietary, commercially controlled, and priced out of reach for developing nations, NISA's open data policy represented a specific choice about what space technology is for. The information belongs to the planet it is monitoring. NISA will spend its operational life looking down. Every 12 days it will complete another pass over the surface of the Earth and record what has changed: the glaciers that are smaller, the aquifers that are lower, the forests that are denser or sparser, the coastlines that have moved. It will generate the most detailed record ever made of what a warming planet looks like in real time, a scientific archive that the people of 2075 will use to understand what the people of 2025 chose to watch and what they chose to do about it. 3 events, 1 month, a peace deal that ended 37 years of conflict by acknowledging the outcome of the last war, an air mole that arrived too capable and too fast for the institutions designed to govern it, and a satellite that will spend years reading the surface of a planet its makers are still learning to protect. August 2025 was a month about capability, what humans can build, what they can negotiate, and the growing distance between what they can do and what they understand about what they have done.